Well, it's interesting. When we observe the Grand Canyon, it's 277 miles long. It's up to 18 miles wide and over 1 mile deep. This is a massive, massive canyon. And yet here we have the relatively small Colorado River flowing right down the middle of it. So here's a question. Could the Colorado River carve that massive canyon? I mean, the side canyons, those that are feeding into the canyon, there's no way the river could have carved those.
There isn't?
Okay, no, because it's going down the middle. It's going to, gravity's going to have that river go into the lowest place and travel in that way. So it implies that there was some other water formation that was carving through, in their interpretation, those rocks. And the only way we can get that is a lot of water over a little bit of time. So I think that's a question that we need to be answering. The canyon is huge, and there's even canyons that are underneath the water out in the oceans that are even bigger than the Grand Canyon. So there is erosional events that are huge that cover the whole planet, not just what we view here in the Grand Canyon.
Before we continue, a quick heads up. Stick around until the end of the interview because we'll be offering an exclusive free stream of our award-winning documentary, Evolution's Achilles Heels. You won't want to miss it. Okay, so I want to continue discussing the Grand Canyon, but you just brought up the idea that there are larger underwater canyons. Can you touch on that and name what
Sure.
that has to do with the Grand Canyon as evidence?
Yeah, there's actually hundreds of canyons that are actually underneath the oceans that are primarily in what we call the continental shelf. In fact, in my home state of California, in the Monterey Bay, there's a canyon that actually is larger than the Grand Canyon. You can't see it because it's underneath the oceans. And this is indicating that at some time, again, massive amount of water was flowing off the continent and carving into what is now the continental shelves, creating these huge canyons that even today are underneath the oceans.
Interesting. So you're saying that that kind of canyon formation is also seen at the Grand Canyon?
Sure. In fact, we can see erosional events all around the world. I just flew in for this talk, and looking out the window of my airplane, everybody can see major erosion that's all around the world, not just here in North America, but all around the world we see erosion. It indicates a significant catastrophic worldwide flood everywhere we look. The evidence is, you might say there's a flood of evidence around the world.
But the continental shelf, underwater canyons are not just in one area. It's like global.
There are hundreds of those around the world. That is correct.
Various continents.
Yes.
Interesting. So returning to the Grand Canyon, is there another scientific evidence?
Well, for example, we might take a look at the gaps between those layers. For instance, at the Grand Canyon, we have thousands and thousands of feet of layers. And in between those gaps, sometimes it's a knife-edge flat layer. In fact, often it is. But yet, if indeed the time is in between the layers, which is what the scientists claim, then why don't we have any erosion between those layers? Why not any burrowing animals? If they sat there for thousands, if not millions of years, you would see things like that. How come we don't see plants and roots and different kinds of weathering? But what we do is we see these flat layers that are almost stacked up like pancakes, indicating that there weren't millions of years between those layers, but that they were laid down quickly. So I think that's a piece of evidence that people need to consider.
Yeah, because I don't think of any sort of flat surface of the earth like just staying completely still and not changing over even 100 years,
Sure.
let alone thousands or millions.
Sure. So when we have those layers, we should see weathering, erosion, and the effects of those millions of years, and it's missing. So if that erosion is missing, the millions of years are missing, and there's not enough time for evolution.
So are you saying, though, that the evolutionists don't have some sort of other explanation for these sedimentary layers? They're not just found at the Grand Canyon. We see them elsewhere in dunes and other canyons and the like. So if they're widespread, continentally big, then are you saying that the evolutionists don't have some sort of explanation using the Big Bang and cosmology to say that when the planet formed billions of years ago, that these layers were laid down then or something?
No, certainly the Big Bang couldn't explain these layers. Yes, they would say cosmically a lot of particles coalesced that brought us about the Earth. However, these sedimentary layers are most obviously laid down by water through some catastrophic event that happened in the past. And the secular scientists would agree with that interpretation, but yet they would say, it must have been a smaller event, while a worldwide flood is a better explanation of how we get these massive layers around the world.
Okay, so we got the massive sedimentary layers around the world and at the Grand Canyon that you can see. Why is the flood example a better theory?
Well, I can't think of anything that would better explain these massive layers. So when we look at how that river could carve the canyon, it's interesting to know that there's a big plateau where the Grand Canyon sits. So right at the rim, everything's flat, and rivers usually don't make a flat surface. A great amount of water is a better explanation for how that happened. But it's interesting because north of the canyon, we have what's called the Grand Staircase. This is about 1 mile thick of layers that not only extend up, but they cover almost all of North America. Some of those layers are extensive, that they cover continents, not just in this continent of North America, but around the world. We have massive layers that are continent size stacked up like pancakes. Now, here's the thing. Can a little flood do that? No, we need a massive amount of water, a worldwide cataclysm in order to explain those massive layers that are around the world.
This has been an incredible conversation, Scott. And I think a lot of the listeners will be interested in learning more about the Grand Canyon, these science subjects that we have looked at, and the details from the Word of God. So we do want to make a recommendation for them. And we have Evolution's Achilles Heels. It is a documentary film. Can you tell them more about it?
Sure. This film that we made some years ago actually features 15 PhD scientists. It shows the very foundations of evolution. And what we do is we show a better interpretation or a more logical interpretation of the scientific evidence. So I would say if somebody's been told all their life that evolution is a scientific fact and that the millions of years along with that are also scientific, I would suggest this to be a great resource. I think it's something that we're going to go ahead and offer for free to stream online. So I think this would be something that everyone listening should go ahead and take a look at.
Fantastic. If you want to see Evolution's Achilles Heels, you'll find a link to where you can watch it for free, a stream, in the description.